Peace, peace. This your host, Selah Shalom, and this is the Cosmon Teachings and the Words of Jehovah and His Angel Ambassadors from the Cosmon Bible Owaspi. And the topic of discussion today is called The Rise of Constantine and the Council of Nicea. Here I will show the inspiring angel that was behind Constantine being LOOEAMONG, now styled Christ, and his general angel warrior THOTH, alias Gabriel, who established Christianity on earth for the false Christ, LOOEAMONG. I already showed you how the term Christ has nothing to do with Yeshua. Christ being the Chi and the Rho, the X and the P. This symbol was in use during and before the 1st century, and up until the time of Constantine, when Constantine designed the new cross by command in the vision he had in his dream. But here in Owaspi, it gives you the angel who was responsible for giving Constantine that dream of the cross, being LOOEAMONG, now styled Christ. Now, God's book of Esther, chapter 48, verse 10 through 62, it states, verse 10, LOOEAMONG cried out, "Enough, enough, O Gabriel, thought. I too will have a mortal emperor." Verse 11, descend thou again to the earth, to Constantine, and inspire thou him to raise a mortal army of 40,000 men and move upon Rome. This war that is about to take place is referring to the battle of the Milvian Bridge between Constantine under the inspiration of LOOEAMONG, now styled Christ, and Maximus under the inspiration of Baal. Verse 12, behold, I will prove myself before Constantine, and he shall covenant unto me. Through him will I drive Baal out of Rome. And as I make myself Christ of heaven, so will I make Constantine emperor of the whole earth. So here you can see it was the false Christ, LOOEAMONG, that was the power behind Constantine and his victory. Verse 13, THOTH, alias Gabriel, then descended to the earth to Constantine, who was a Suez, who could both see angels and hear them talk. And THOTH, alias Gabriel, induced Constantine to raise an army of 40,000 soldiers and set out for conquest. So here it states Constantine was a Suez, which is a person who was able to hear the voice of spirits or angels and can see them as well. Now here's where Constantine sees the Chi and the Rho, the sign of the Christ, in the atmosphere before the battle. Verse 14, and when they had come to the plains of Agatha, even where the Christian had been massacred many years before, behold, LOOEAMONG and his angel host appeared in the heavens above Constantine's army, so that all the soldiers thereof beheld the heavenly visitors. Verse 15, and LOOEAMONG showed unto Constantine in the air of heaven a true cross, on which was written in letters of blood, Al Christ. So here you can see it was LOOEAMONG, now styled Christ, that was responsible for the sign of the cross in heaven, the Chi and the Rho. Now here's where LOOEAMONG comes to Constantine to interpret the sign, which was the cross. Verse 16, nevertheless, there was no man present who could read the inscription, and many were conjunctures thereon. In the evening, LOOEAMONG descended to Constantine and said unto him, this is the interpretation of the sign, and the cross I show thee. Verse 17, in this thou shalt conquer, and when thou arises in the morning, thou shalt cause to be made a cross of most excellent workmanship, and thou shalt have it inscribed, the Christ, our Lord, Son of the Holy Ghost. So here you can clearly see it was LOOEAMONG, the false Christ, that came to Constantine in his dream to design a cross which was first the Chi and the Rho, the X and the P, before it became an actual cross. Verse 18, and this cross shalt thou cause to be carried at the head of thy army, and thy edicts shalt thou call bulls, which is laws, and they shall be written with lamb's blood, in remembrance of the sacrifice of the Jews in Egypt, through which sacrifice the Father in heaven delivered them, for I am Lord of heaven and earth. So this was the cross that the Christians first used in their conquest. And now you have LOOEAMONG, the false Christ, claiming to be the God of the Torah. Now the Torah is getting mixed in with the false Christ doctrine. Verse 19, accordingly a cross was made, and highly decorated, and inscribed as commanded, and Constantine and his soldiers went forth with renewed courage, and so great was their zeal that everything fell before them. Verse 20, And now that LOOEAMONG's angel had a stronghold on the earth, they were in all respect the equal of angels of the pagan gods, so that while Constantine was victorious on earth, Gabriel, otherwise THOTH, was victorious in heaven. Now here's where Baal reigns come to an end, having a rule for nearly 3,000 years. Verse 21. And it came to pass in not many years that LOOEAMONG through Gabriel captured Baal, and all the false gods in all the regions far and near. And Gabriel took, along with the captured gods, 7,600,000 warring angels, and carried them all together to Makavishtu in Hades, and cast them into hell, where there were already more than 10 millions who were in chaos and madness. Verse 22. And Gabriel had the place walled around with fire and noxious gases, so that none could escape. Verse 23. Such was the end of the earthly dominion of Baal, who had ruled over mortals for evil for upward of 3,000 years. And in fact, it was the final termination of the earthly gods that ruled over mortals through oracles and pagan practice. Verse 24. The earth was now clear of evil gods, whose chief labor had been for thousands of years to capture the spirits of the recent dead and make slaves of them for the glory of the Hadean kingdoms. Verse 25. Thus had LOOEAMONG done a good service, for the earth and lower heavens had now nothing to suffer from any gods except the true one, the Trinity. Now here's where LOOEAMONG the false Christ inspires Constantine to form the Council of Nicea and compile the Bible, as we know it today. Verse 26. LOOEAMONG inspired Constantine, the mortal emperor, to call together a council of wise men from all the kingdoms of Arabia, Hellas, Persia, and Europe, to select from all the religious doctrines in the world that which was the wisest and best, that it may be established by kings, emperors, governors, by the sword and spear, so there should never more be but one religion. So here it states that the Bible will be compiled based off all religious doctrines coming from Arabia, Africa, Persia, Helen, and Europe, and it will be authorized by the king with the sword to end all religious disputes, because all the wars during the 1st century coming up to the 3rd century was based off religion and the fighting for the gods. Verse 27. And in course of time there assembled a council of 1,786 learned men from all the regions named, and they placed themselves under the rules and presence of Constantine, and he selected from them 144 speakers. So here 1,786 learned men from the regions mentioned earlier came before Constantine, and Constantine selected 144 men out of the 1,786 learned men. Verse 28. As for the others, they were divided into groups of 12, besides a goodly number being appointed scribes and translators. But many having the appearance of Jews were rejected altogether. So here these 144 men was divided in groups of 12s, like 12 disciples. And those who appeared or was a Hebrew, Yehudian, or Jew was rejected. So here it shows how the Hebrews had nothing to do with the compiling of the Constantine Bible, the Old and New Testament. Verse 29. Now the council had brought with them in all 2,231 books and legendary tales of gods and saviors and great men, together with the record of the doctrines taught by them. So now the council collects 2,231 books about gods and saviors from different countries. So this is the foundation of the stories that will be the Bible, being a collection of stories from different countries at different times in history. Verse 30. Constantine, being under the inspiration of the false Christ LOOEAMONG, through Gabriel alias THOTH, thus spoke. Verse 31. Search ye these books, of whatsoever is good in them, that retain, but whatsoever is evil, that cast away. What is good in one book, unite ye with that which is good in another book. And whatsoever is thus brought together shall be called the book of books. And it shall be the doctrine of my people, which I will recommend unto all nations, that there shall be no more war for religious sake. So here Gabriel speaks through Constantine on how to select from the 2,231 books at hand, selecting the good parts from all the different books, uniting them into one book, being the book of books, which will be the Bible. Verse 32, Gabriel, alias Thoth, and his angel host formed a circle around about the mortal council, 1,000 angels deep on every side, and extending upward densely for a long way, and thence by a line of light extending to LOOEAMONG's throne in Hepsendai, his heavenly kingdom. Now here it shows how Gabriel and his host was behind the scenes overlooking the works of the Nicean Council, and by a line of light extending upward to the false Christ LOOEAMONG's heavenly kingdom, Hepsendai. Verse 33, by day and by night, Thoth, alias Gabriel, and his host watched over the mortal council, overshadowing their every thought and word. Verse 34, for 4 years and 7 months the council thus deliberated, and selected from 2,231 books and legendary tales. Verse 35, and at the end of that time there had been selected and combined much that was good and great, and worded so as to be well remembered by mortals. So here it took 4 years and 7 months to select all the good doctrines, proverbs, and precepts from the 2,231 books collected from Arabia, Africa, Persia, Helen, and Europe. Now here's where the council decides on what God to choose for their book, the Bible. Verse 36, as yet no God had been selected by the council, so they balloted in order to determine that matter. And the first ballot gave prominence to the following gods: Jove, Jupiter, Silenus, Baal, Thoth, God, Apollo, Juno, Ares, Taurus, Minerva, Retz, Mithra, Theo, Phragapati, Atius, Durga, Indra, Neptune, Vulcan, Chryse, Egna, Croesus, Pallades, Huit, Hermes, Thulis, Thammuz, Egypt, Io, Aph, Saturn, Gitchines, Minos, Maximo, Hecla, and Fernes. Verse 37, besides these there were 22 other gods and goddesses that received a small number of votes each. So here it shows how the council are selecting a collection out of 59 gods to choose who will be the representative God of this book, the Bible. Verse 38, in 7 days thereafter another ballot was taken, and the number of gods was reduced to 27. Verse 39, and in 7 days thereafter another ballot was taken, and the number of gods was reduced to 21. Verse 40, thus was the number reduced each ballot, but slower and slower. 6 days in the week were allotted to discuss the merits and demerits of the gods, but many weeks elapsed towards the last, when the number was not reduced. Verse 41, for 1 year and 5 months the ballots lasted, and at that time the ballots rested nearly equally on 5 gods, namely Jove, Christ, Mars, Cretit, and Shiva. And here the ballot changed not for yet 7 times more, which was 7 weeks. So here it states it took 1 year and 5 months to decide out of the 59 gods selected from all the ancient records, from the different regions, reducing them down to 5 gods to choose from now. Verse 42, Constantine spoke before the council, saying, ours is a labor for all the nations of the earth, and for all time. I know the angels of heaven are with us in this matter. We have found 5 gods, good and acceptable before the world. What say the council? That the angels give us a sign. For we do know the angels' sign of these gods. Verse 43, the council said, well said, the wisest of men. Such a God shall be ours, now and forever. So here Constantine and the council decides to ask the angels for a sign on what God to choose for their book. Verse 44, and immediately there and then LOOEAMONG and his angels gave a sign in fire of a cross smeared with blood, and it rested on a bull's horn, even as a cloud of fire on a cloud of fire. Verse 45, whereupon Christ was declared God and Lord of all the nations of the earth. Verse 46.